Hello. So, in an interesting few days, even weeks in America, and I'll draw that back to Ireland in a few minutes, right? What have we been witnessing? Over nearly 10 years now, we have had the Jeffrey Epstein story, right, unfolding. And in between those years, we had 4 years where Donald Trump's enemies, or people that are opposed to him, were in the driver's seat. They didn't release any documents related to Epstein or Trump related in any document, right? Then Trump gets back into power. He says he's going to look into it. He said he might not release it because there might be names in it that aren't involved in it, like indicating some sort of stitch-up, okay? Then Elon Musk comes out and says that Trump is in the Epstein files. Then again, a massive group of people just decide Trump needs to release these now. He needs to release them. And so he does, right? So his Attorney General now has come out and said that they're going to look into releasing the grand jury testimonies and the evidence that was given forth in these grand jury testimonies, which would involve eyewitness accounts, right? First-hand witness accounts. Interesting. So what are those people going to name? Who are those people going to name? Now, just coincidentally, right, what just happens to be happening too at the same time is Tulsi Gabbard, who is she the head of, is it the DIA? Some form of intelligence branch in America anyway. She has come out and said that, and released documents as well, right? This stuff has been open as well and released in court cases previously. The Durham court case, right? It was shown that the Steele dossier, which was, again, a dossier, right? A paper full of evidence to suggest that Russia was involved with Donald Trump and helped Donald Trump fix the 2016 election. That came out to be fraudulent, right? And cooked up by the Democratic Party with Hillary Clinton involved in it, right? That's on court papers now. Court paper testimony. It wasn't challenged, it was accepted. So we have Hillary Clinton involved in that. We have the Democratic Party involved in that. Now, Tulsi Gabbard has come out speaking of the fact that Barack Obama is involved in this. He's involved in fabricating a collusion between a sitting elected US president and a foreign leader, foreign military, foreign intelligence, whatever you want, the foreign nation, right? Involved in that too are the heads of the CIA at the time, John Brennan, I think, and the head of the FBI at the time, Comey. Those two are now under criminal investigation. Along with Tulsi Gabbard is calling for Barack Obama to be under investigation. Now, I would imagine that these investigations have already been completed, right, behind the scenes. And instead of just making it look like Trump is purging his enemies and using lawfare against people that he sees as his political enemies, I think what you're going to start seeing, and what you have been seeing, is the drip feed of information, slowly, consistently and surely, right, to allow people to absorb it bit by bit and become more familiar with a perspective change that is going to be needed in order for people to start accepting a total 180 perspective on Barack Obama. Okay, so in Ireland, we have sculptures and monuments built, statues built to this man and his wife. We have some shopping centre, petrol garage station, the Obama Plaza in Ireland, right? This man is seen as some sort of demigod across most nations. Why, you would wonder? Like, what did he do that was really great? Not much. He was bombing people and countries nearly every day that he was in the office, in the president's office in America. He was drone striking countries, people. He's said to be part of, deeply involved in the creation of ISIS themselves, right, in the Middle East. The man is steeped in blood of people, but he's painted as a demigod, right? And people think that he's the greatest president who's ever lived. The racial tensions between people in America, at least from what we can see in Ireland, exploded under his watch. And people declared him great because he's the first black president. But he's also half white. But they never include that part, right? His mother was white. They never include that. So are these two stories linked? I would suggest yes, they are. Okay? Because think about this. In order for an outgoing president who spent 8 years building the infrastructure that he wanted, he's going to develop deep connections to people that are in positions of power. In the positions in the Central Intelligence Agency, in the FBI, in the media, in the court systems, and people who are in similar positions in different nations, right? This is just axiomatic. This is common sense stuff. So, could he then use those relationships after leaving office to, number one, spy on the incoming president? We know that this is true. And number two, to engage in an act of treason in order to try and overthrow an elected president of America by fabricating a collusion smear or documents that would indicate that Trump is involved in essentially being like an agent of a foreign nation or working in tandem with a foreign nation, and working with a foreign nation that attempted to suppress legitimate democracy in America. That is treason. And the offense that comes with that is the death penalty. That is the highest crime that anyone can commit in their own nation. And Barack Obama, who was the president of America for 8 years, looks very likely to have been involved in that very act, that very crime. Okay? But how could he get people on board with this? Because his power is now gone, at least officially, because his terms are finished. He's no longer the president. Trump is the president, so Trump, on paper, holds all the cards here. He is essentially the boss of James Comey, the head of the FBI, and the heads of the CIA. But yet, those two organizations still seem to have been working with Obama, if this comes out to be the case, and it looks very likely that it is. They retained the working relationship with Obama, even though officially they should not have had one with him because his role is finished. He goes back to being a civilian now, or a citizen, right? So he should not be working with the FBI or the CIA in anything. Unless he had something over these people that was more influential in terms of getting them on side and doing what he wanted or working with him, willingly or unwillingly, that was more powerful and held more of a sway than their boss, who is the new president, Donald Trump, at the moment, right? Or back then even. What could that have been? Money? Probably not. Blackmail? Likely. Right? And that's where the Epstein story kind of merges in with this. Because both of them are running at the same time, and I do not believe that to be coincidental. What was Epstein involved in? He was involved in, I suppose we can say that he was, right? Because Ghislaine Maxwell, his right-hand woman, or even his mentor or boss even, I would suggest, that she was over him, not him over her. But she is convicted of human trafficking, okay? We have been told as well that there's tens of thousands of tapes and hours of Jeffrey Epstein committing crimes against children. We also have the web We don't necessarily need the list, right? And we can never know for sure until we have rock solid documented proof showing that X, Y, and Z people were there and were doing this. We know that many of these people were there. Bill Gates, Stephen Hawking, Prince Andrew. We know that these entities or these creatures were involved with Jeffrey Epstein and were on the island. Bill Clinton, again. We know that these people were involved with the man, and we know that they were on his island. What they were doing there, we can't be rock solid on, okay? And even if evidence comes out to show that, you can never really be certain, right? It could be AI generated, it could be edited, all that sort of stuff. But the evidence at the moment would suggest that Epstein, and I would imagine there's many of these little webs around different countries, right? Epstein was involved in blackmailing high-profile people, powerful people, scientists, physicists, people in the media, politicians, people in the monarchy, the English monarchy, right? He was involved in blackmailing them, and I believe that is what is being used by Obama and whatever entities are around him to get people on side in order for them to fabricate this treasonous act against Donald Trump, which has been shown to have been false. Okay? So, what does that have to do with Ireland? Well, we know that there's some sort of weird sentiment or relationship between Barack Obama and Irish politicians. I think he's scheduled to come here soon as well, interestingly enough, right? What is that relationship? Well, in Ireland, what we're seeing hanging over Irish people is the potential rug pull of American companies who have allowed for massive amounts of money to run through this country. Maybe not in yours or mine pockets, but a significant amount of wealth has been funneled through this country, right, with pharmaceutical companies and technological companies and stuff like that. And do we really believe that we just were given that for some reason? Or it's because we were savvy with our taxes? Do you really believe that? What's that about, right? So who's involved in those decisions? Why does Barack Obama have such a significant impact or persona in Ireland? Who was his vice president? It was Joe Biden, right? And you remember Leo Varadkar went over to visit Joe Biden and promptly returned, and after returning, promptly resigned, right? So was he being told what to do? If so, then that shows a massive influence from the American Democratic Party, at least, over Irish politicians and over Ireland as a whole then. So, Jeffrey Epstein, what does he have to do with Ireland? Not much on the surface of it, right? But we'll remember that in 2019 there was a Sun newspaper article that described a party in Ireland in 2002. And this party was attended by Jeffrey Epstein and by a myriad of other characters. I believe that Mary Robinson was there. Bono was there. There was a diplomat from a South American company there who was said to have been the one who provided the story. Okay? And what was this party about? It was to celebrate. Remember now, Jeffrey Epstein was involved in the trafficking of underage girls. And boys, I would imagine, as well, right? And this party was about celebrating exceptional students, young people, right? Are we talking secondary school students? So all underage. What a bizarre party for a known paedophile, convicted paedophile, to have been involved in. I believe Bertie Ahern was at this party too. If I'm getting that wrong, then fair enough, but I believe they were, right? And you can go and find this article yourself and read it. But we have a known paedophile stopping off in Ireland who's been known for trafficking children on his Lolita Express, which is the name of the plane, right? Harkening back to the novel Lolita about a child. You get it. A known paedophile who's known for trafficking underage kids coming to Ireland to celebrate exceptional students, which most likely are all under the age of 18, so they're minors. Right? What a bizarre turn of events that is, right? So, knowing that, do we really believe that it's only US military planes that are stopping off and refueling here? Right? What sort of relationship were these people having with Jeffrey Epstein? Because Jeffrey Epstein at the time was a known nobody. He was a nobody. Right? It's kind of only now the name is a bit of a household name, but at the time he was a relative nobody. So how did he come to be rubbing shoulders with such influential people, Irish politicians and Bono? How did this turn out, right? How did this come to be? And then we look at Ireland's history with not just sexual abuse, that we all understand that. We have had a century of it, at least a century of it, documented, right, of state-sponsored, state-approved and state-defended abuse of children. And that is the trafficking of children as well. We know that there was nuns in tandem with the Irish state managerial class, whatever we want to call it, right, who were selling orphans and selling newborn babies in this country. We know this. This is known now, right? Known at the time as well. I don't believe it ever was not known. But Ireland's history with trafficking, we continuously get reported as one of the worst countries, if not the worst country in Europe, for combating and dealing with human trafficking. We also have, over the last few years, politicians who have invited God knows who, everybody and anybody over to this country. And with that, we have had hundreds of undocumented minors, right? Children ending up in Ireland. Unaccompanied minors. So children just deciding to walk across Europe and get a lift over to Ireland and then apply for asylum. That doesn't happen, right? These children are trafficked in here. Many of these children end up in state care, in the care and under the watchful eye of the government. A government who is still made up of these entities who would have been friends, hobnobbing with the same people that were at this Epstein party in 2002. These are all the same they all hang around with each other, they all go to each other's weddings, they're all friends, they're all probably married into each other, right? These are they're not aristocracy anymore. It's just a different version of it, right? It's just a different name, but it's the same idea. Ruling families and ruling bloodlines, right? Age-old story. So, children are coming here after being invited. They're going missing. They're ending up in state care. And they're vanishing from there. At the same time, we end up with these PDF file rings, right, that are preying on children that are in state care. A lot of these are in emergency accommodation, right, which is staying in hotel rooms, staying in B&Bs, these sorts of things. The very same places that this government has been bringing over these military-age men and putting them into. And now you have scores of these men who are travelling around, picking up these kids that are in state care and trafficking them off to other people. Where are the investigations for this? There is none. There is none. Because who would be calling for that? And who would have the power, soft or official, to be able to stymie and stop these investigations? The government. The very people who have created this situation. Right? We've had children that have been found shipped into Ireland, trafficked into Ireland, with the aim of harvesting their organs. We have kids that have gone missing from state care and have been found in brothels later. All under the watchful eye of this government. This stuff I know about it. I'm just some guy in a car. Right? This stuff has been brought up in the Dáil. No investigations. Nobody has lost their job over it. Micheál Martin's response was, your kids go wandering. Right? these politicians and the state, this government, the guards, court systems, who are letting people who are charged and convicted of child abuse and all levels of depravity, there's judges in this country that are leaving these predators walk free every single day nearly, right? The whole system is up to its neck in the abuse of children. So what's my point with all of this? My point is that just because something is happening in America does not mean that it is an isolated incident and that it does not have any bearing on what goes on in Ireland. Of course it does. Because it all moves in the same direction, right? It's all moving in the same direction. Irish people, largely, the Irish media had apolitical, right, nearly, till 2016. Then all of a sudden everyone is told to hate Donald Trump. Who, by the way, and this is very, very rarely brought out, if ever, I don't believe it is brought out by Irish media. He ran in 2015, and one of his main objectives was eradicating child abuse and child trafficking. He called for the death penalty of anybody who's involved in this. And all of a sudden, the whole world media hates Donald Trump. The media in Ireland, which we have, RTE, state-sponsored, right? The government funds RTE, so RTE will do what's in the government's best interest. Absolute conflict of interest. Absolute conflict of interest. Against the law, against any semblance of justice and morality. We have BBC on our televisions who have been funded by USAID, right? Which is the financial arm, right? The international financing arm of the CIA, who were working with Obama to frame a sitting president, right? So that's what you're dealing with. Barack Obama, who also was selling guns to the Mexican cartels. Why? Operation Fast and Furious. What's that about? What's he doing there? Right? And then you have the surge of fentanyl and stuff into America coming from these cartels. Right? Probably being shipped from China over to Mexico, Canada, and bang, pumped into America. What's that about? We have the same thing going on here. The exact same thing going on here. Right? So, I think we can all accept and understand that what's going on in America has its mirror correlation in Ireland, right? And other Western nations. For whatever reason, the leaders in the Western nations, I don't believe they're stupid, and I think to just call them stupid it helps them in some way. Right? Because it can be evil. You take a different perspective on someone stupid than you do if they're evil, or if you see them as evil, right? But they're all useful clowns anyway, whether they are unwillingly being manipulated or whether they know well there's something being held over them that is forcing them to make the decisions that they're making, which is the total eradication and destruction of the nation states that they're supposed to be the heads of, and the very people that they're supposed to be representing. The very people who pay these people's way. That's one payment, right? But we don't really know what goes on behind the scenes, right? So, we can accept that what goes on in all Western nations seems to be in some way related, if not totally related. I would suggest the latter, right? So what are we looking at here? What happens now in the next few weeks if it comes out that Obama was involved in this, and it's absolutely the case that he was trying to stitch up and overthrow a sitting American president, treason, right? Donald Trump also shared a couple of weeks ago a picture of himself and Obama, and it said, "All roads lead to Obama. Share if you want public military tribunals." It looks like that's not a joke anymore, right? That could very well be where we're headed. And if you couple that then with the Epstein stuff, the grand jury testimonies that are said to be released, is Obama going to be named in that? Or are members of Obama's regime going to be named in that? And are these two things going to coalesce so it looks like you had a sitting president who was involved in the blackmail of members of the science community, members of his own political party, members of rival political parties, members of intelligence agencies, members perhaps even of foreign nations, right? Because we'll find that we're no stranger to this in Ireland. We had the Kincora House scandal, right, in Ireland. We also have places like Ferry House, where unbelievable stuff was revealed in the Dáil, under Dáil privilege, right? That there was members of the Department of Education that were identified as being involved in brutalising children in Ferry House and places like that, and that there was animals involved, right? There was animals involved. We have these things, but how much of that is going to be released, right? I don't know. But we're no stranger to this. And this isn't bizarro stuff, right? These are all documented cases. These are all known things that have occurred in Ireland. There are known links, clearly, between the Irish politicians and their respective politicians in America, right? And you'd wonder, what is the price that we have paid for towing the line to go along with what has been a certain side or whatever, a certain perspective that America has taken over the years, which has changed since Donald Trump, right? And you see the blowback from that then. So now we look like we are put in the crosshairs, right? And the power that allowed Irish politicians to continuously manage and maintain Ireland, which has historically been a political hotbed, right, has been stable, consistent economic growth, and most people having enough to be able to satisfy themselves day to day. And a lot of that has come from the American money that has been here, right? American organizations, industries, and companies. That looks like it's going to be routed out, which takes the power out of the politicians in Ireland's hands, because all of a sudden you have an economy that is horrendous looking. People hungry, people starving, people fighting over bare necessities. Irish people we won't tolerate that too much. We're very hesitant on defending anything other than ourselves and our bread on the table for tomorrow. So once this comes to pinch the pockets and break the backs of each individual front door and each individual Irish person's back, then you're going to see a retaliation. Then you're going to see action being taken, because desperation will sit in, right? Now, if it comes out, or is even hinted at, that it wasn't just finances that had these people in Ireland over a barrel, it might have been far more nefarious things, then what are we going to do? What kind of reaction are you going to see, right? So the public persona of Obama is this demigod, right? This truly beneficent creature who has been the greatest of all, bar none, right? And Trump is the devil. These cases look like very well that they are going to destroy the propaganda that has been pumped Ireland and across Western nations, that has been pumped into the head of Irish people about this man for years and years and years. And people are going to have a choice to make then. They can admit, and these are for all the RTE watchers, right? If you know, you know, and if you don't, I'm not talking to you, I'm talking to the average Irish person, right, that still believes and trusts in government and state and the news and all that sort of stuff. So they're going to have their minds blown over these stories. I don't think RTE are as big a bulwark in terms of getting information out or stopping information to get out as they would like to think they are. I think this thing is going to be way too big to hold on to, and it is going to reverberate across many Western nations. And Ireland people will finally realise that they have been absolutely duped for decades. And your Obama Plaza, that'll be renamed, the statue will come down, and we will have to build from there again, right? But I will end it on this. Don't think for 1 second that what's going on in America has no relevance to Ireland. 100% it does. And I think we're going to see that over the next few weeks.